Okay, episode 1.
All right, everyone. So, welcome to our first official episode of Where Do the Meeples Go? If you haven't had a chance to check out our introduction episode, feel free to jump back to that. But otherwise, stick around. We're going to be talking about unique mechanics in board games today, and we'll hopefully hit a bunch of different ones and hit a few different genres. Feel free to reach out to us at our Gmail account at meeplesgo@gmail.com or on Twitter at meeplesgo. We'll be your hosts for this episode of Where Do the Meeples Go? I am Michael, and with me I have Phillip
Hi, everybody.
and Tara.
Hey.
So we're going to start off by talking a little bit about some of the games we've recently played. One that I know that I've had a lot of fun with, and I've only got a chance to play just a couple of times, is Cosmic Encounter. I don't know if anyone else has got a chance to play that yet, but it's a game from about 2008 by Fantasy Flight. And like a lot of Fantasy Flight's games, it has somewhat complicated rules, but it also becomes incredibly fun to play once you get those down. You have all kinds of alien races to play as, and it's just an all-out battle against all other people you're playing. And when I say all kinds of alien races, I mean like in the hundreds range.
Oh yeah, there are some crazy ones in there. I actually have this game too. I've only played it once, but man, I can't wait to play it again. It's so much fun.
That's funny. I just placed an order online to actually get this game. Uh, now that it's back in stock, I finally found it and decided to pick it up. So, yeah. Now, this game has been around for a while, though. It's just kind of been
Yeah, it's been hopped
reskinned. And,
around, yeah.
yeah, like in 2008 was the latest one from Fantasy Flight, right?
Yeah, but it came out in like the 70s. It was an old game. So how was your experience, Michael? Like, who did you play with? What happened?
I'm going to give everyone a heads up for anyone who hasn't played before. All the races are marked by difficulty and kind of like an entry level. So you have green for ones that are easier to play as, and mostly they're battle-based mechanics, so they'll give you a boost when you're fighting someone else. But you also have really convoluted ones, and I made the mistake of jumping on one my first time playing, where the rule for the race was you can ask anyone yes or no questions, and they can't lie to you, and they have to go by whatever they say for the rest of the round. I thought it'd be really cool. Turns out it's a lot more difficult than I thought it'd be, so definitely pay attention to those.
That's interesting. I can't remember who I played as. It was a cool one though. I think it like the ability was I could either switch cards with another player, or I got to decide. Maybe it was I got to decide if high wins or if low wins in an encounter. Maybe that was my special ability.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. I just got the Cosmic Dominion expansion, which is the newest one that came out last year. The artwork is so pretty. I haven't played it yet, but I'm super excited about it.
So last week I played at the game night I go to, played like a 3.5 hour game of viticulture, which it shouldn't take that long. It's a worker placement game about growing wine in Italy, but I was playing with 4 players total, which it really shouldn't take that long. We just got kind of plagued down. 2 of the guys got analysis paralysis. Really, they just sat there and they tried to analyze every single move.
That's the worst.
It was so hard, and it was their first time ever playing this game. So, we kind of stumbled through the rules and everything like that at the very beginning. So that added time to it. But during the later game, at that point, both of those guys had all the workers you could possibly get. Like, you can hire workers as one of your actions up to a certain amount. And all of them had, like, all the workers they possibly could, which you don't need that many to actually win and do well. I actually think it's one of those kind of things that in this game it actually bogs you down a little bit more if you have more workers, because there's only a limited number of spots on there, and at a certain point you just end up wasting them, like collecting 1 gold. 3.5 hours is just a really long time for that game to be played. And it's probably going to be a while before I play it again, even though I do think it's a really solid worker placement game and a lot of fun. It's just kind of slightly soured on the experience a little bit.
That sucks.
Yeah. And then I also played Cutthroat Caverns, which is a game I've never played before. It's been around for a while. I think it came out in 2007. And basically what it is it's like a dungeon explorer where you just have to kill these giant monsters. And you're playing like a typical kind of adventure in an RPG setting. Like there's a dwarf warrior, a rogue, a wizard, an archer, all that kind of stuff. And it's a semi-cooperative game where you're all attacking the monster at once, but the person to do the last damage gets the prestige for killing it. So the tagline on it that I actually really like is, without teamwork, you'll never survive. Without betrayal, you'll never win. So it's kind of cool in that respect where it's semi-cooperative, but then it's also got a gotcha mechanic where it's like, oh, I go to lay the final blow into this boss, and then somebody plays a game where, oh no, you just actually did a fake attack, and then I actually came in and stabbed him and won. So it's a little bit of fun. I didn't hate it. It's like a more serious Munchkin.
I've actually never played Munchkin. I don't know. There's just something about it. I don't know if it's the artwork or the theme. It just doesn't like get me at all.
I see Munchkin how I think of Nickelback. It's the band that everyone loves to hate, but there's still the diehard fans out there, and most people can be talked into giving it a chance every once in a while.
I'm sure I'd like it if I tried it. It's just like, it's not something that I'm like, ooh, let's play that game. There's always something else more appealing to me that I want to try.
It's kind of an easy target for like board gamers to, I don't know, kind of feel slightly elitist about it, just like, oh, you still play Munchkin. I think the main problem with Munchkin is they've just flooded the market with so many different like variations. Space Munchkin, Cthulhu Munchkin,
Zombie
Wild West,
Munchkin.
Zombie Munchkin, like all these kind of things that they do introduce new stuff, but yeah, there's just so much of it out there. It's like, if you're a diehard Munchkin fan and you don't want to have everything, you're just probably broke at this point. Just you have no money left over. Yeah, Tara, what have you been playing?
Well, before I tell you what I've been playing, I should preface this with, normally when we have board game nights, someone gets to pick their night and they pick the games, and we usually get through them, and depending on how hard they are, we stay up, all night after work. But this this last game night was really interesting because we all had a lot of sugar before we started playing, and normally we don't have sweets before, and you wouldn't think that would be a problem. But it was a huge problem. We had too many Oreos, and we just could not focus, and learning new games was really hard. But I did play Dominion for the first time, which was really cool. We had just the base set. I don't really know much about, like, the Dominion, but I know they have tons of expansions. But I had a lot of fun. It was pretty cool. It's kind of like, I've played Splendor before, so it's kind of similar to that, and it's set collecting and hand management kind of stuff, so I really enjoyed that. I typically don't like those kind of games, but a lot of my friends are really into it, so I gave it a shot. The other game we played, I really couldn't even tell you what it's about, because I was so hyped up on sugar, I just could not focus. But it was a worker placement game called Elvichico or Elvichico. I'm not really sure how you say that. We just got hung up on, in the rule book, it's like one of the locations you can go to was called Brown Town, and it was in quotations. And being hopped up on sugar, we just could not get over it. And we laughed every single time. And it got to the point where halfway through the game, we just had to stop. It was like, we can't do this right now. I'm sure it's a great game.
Yeah, I'm sure it's one of those things that, like, when they're designing the game, they think nothing of it, and it just gets to that certain point where they don't even, like, it's not even in their minds that it could be construed differently.
Yeah.
Then the publisher puts it out, and it's probably like, oh, crap, really? We did that?
Yeah.
Why did no one catch it?
And it could just be, like, a poor translation, too. Maybe we'll try that game again. I know my coworker got it at BGG Con, because I think at BGG Con they have this thing where it's the opening day, you get in early and you get 2 free games, and this was one of the free games they had.
Oh, cool.
So it's like a $50 game. that my coworker got for free.
Yeah, I know that's a lot of cons, kind of the smaller ones, and I know BGG Con is pretty big. Board Game Geek Con, for anybody that was wondering. I know a lot of those kind of conventions do that opening day. You come in and you get a free game if you do like the early bird registration or something like that. Archway to the West, which is a game conference down in St. Louis, is doing something similar to that.
Nice.
So yeah, you guys want to go ahead and dive into our main topic of today?
This'll be fun.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit. Let's rant, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
So today we're talking about unique mechanics. Something in a game that makes that game truly stand out from another. Now, there are many kind of iterations of these eventually, but there's always usually one game that kind of starts it out, gets designers thinking about using this mechanic in their games. So while it may be something that is used in a different game, we may talk about like the kind of the first ones to do it. I got to start out with Dead of Winter's Crossroads cards. Now, Dead of Winter is a popular game, came out in 2014, published by Plaid Hat Games. I love this game. I think it's very solid in its theme where it's not so overbearing.
How many zombie games have you played, Phil?
Lots of them. I love zombies.
Okay. Well, maybe that's where we differ.
I've had a love affair of zombies since I saw the 1970s version of Dawn of the Dead back when I was in 8th grade, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I adore anything zombie. And there's a lot of zombie games out there that are not very good at all. So I agree with you. It's, zombies have kind of potentially overstayed their welcome in pop culture.
Yeah.
But it's all about finding the good games that are related to it. And I think this is a really good game.
I personally think that this game, other than the crossroad cards, which is our main topic, it's what we're talking about, I do like that part of the game. For sure. I thought that was a lot of fun. And just like the way that some of those cards get triggered is really unique and kind of funny at times. Someone's trying to make a move and you're like, oh, or what are you about to do? Oh, okay. And then you like pull out the crossroad card and everyone's like, ah. Other than that, there's nothing about this game that really excites me. I wish I could like it more, but I don't.
All right, yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. The crossroad cards are a pretty unique mechanic. This is the first set of games that use them. I know Plaid Hat has talked about using more in the future. And what these cards are, they're drawn on every player's turn, and they have a little bit of story to them. So it could be triggered by certain events that take place in the game naturally, like moving a player, or if this player is not in play, it may introduce that player later. Usually these come in the form of choices that the player has to make, either as an individual or as a group collective. They add a really nice storytelling element to the game, which is pretty heavy on theme, so you get a real thematic feel to it. And there is a lot of variety. I don't remember how big the deck is, but it's pretty significant. I've played this game probably at least 7 times, and I don't think I've ever seen the same crossroad card come up. And that could just because those events haven't happened in that game or don't happen on that turn. But there is some real depth to it and some really funny and interesting and compelling storytelling elements to it.
The crossroad cards, they kind of add an interesting element to a game that's already somewhat stressful in the aspect that you're already taking a lot of chances. Your characters can die very easily. And don't think that fun and stress are mutually exclusive. That's not something that's always true with board games. In this case, it adds something that's, like Phil said, interesting in the aspect that you have to make a choice. And a lot of times that choice is grab a pistol that could possibly save an area from being overrun, but you also have to risk dying on the spot, which is it's a little bit like gambling, but it almost feels like there's more at stake. It sounds strange saying like this, even though this is just a game, but it definitely draws you, and it gives you a little more of a feeling what it's like to be in the situation of the characters you're playing as.
I really enjoy this game. I like it a lot. I think it does a lot of things well.
When I first heard about it, I was super excited, and a lot of my friends had played it before it had come out, so I got a chance to check it out before it was released to the public. And I liked it, but, after a few plays, it just, it didn't really do anything for me. I'm kind of over the betrayer mechanic in games. I've, done that to death with a lot of the games that we have out right now with like Resistance and Werewolf, what is it? Betrayal at House on the
Mm-hmm.
Hill. I think I've kind of worn out all of those games. So this and the fact that Zombies is worn out for me too is just it was really hard for me to keep enjoying this game.
Michael, what are your thoughts on it?
I'm kind of middle of the road, and I think it is because it's a game that I have to take a break in between playing every once in a while, just because of the fact that it's very heavy and intense play. It takes a lot of mental effort to make sure you're making the right choices. I've never played as the betrayer, and I guess I haven't played as many games with that mechanic, so I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. But I think that adds another element that makes the game pretty bulky in the sense that your mental capacity is pushed to the limit in this game. But I have a lot of fun every time I do play it. It's just one that I might hold off maybe a month or so between each playthrough.
How did you guys feel about like the secret agendas? I was the betrayer one time and I don't remember exactly what my objective was, but it was just like, this is insanely hard for me to accomplish.
I like the secret objectives. I like the way they handled it, as they could make you look like a betrayer even though you're not a betrayer. There's some objectives that you have to complete that would make people look at you kind of funny, and so it kind of antagonizes people to maybe exile more, which I think I've only exiled one person in any of the games I've played, just because I'm like, oh, they might be the betrayer, or they might have these weird kind of objective cards.
Isn't there one where it's like you have to barricade the base and set it on fire or something? And that's not a betrayer mechanic. That's just like a normal objective.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And you can win the game as a group and very, very easily not win it individually. It's a challenge to even get to the point where you can stock up on the items you might need to win or complete those objectives like building barricades when there's other things that you have to worry about that are more pressing.
I want to try playing a game where nobody has like a secret objective and everybody's like playing above board and trying to complete the main objective, because sometimes the main objective is a hard one to do without even trying to do your secret objective. So I want to try playing a game like that and maybe see if it improves or kind of makes the game less fun. I'm on the fence about whether it would improve it or, kind of diminish from it. So I think I may try that out next time.
I will say, as far as like just fun gaming stories go, the second time I played this game, I was over at a friend's apartment and we played it as 6 players, even though technically it's a 5-player game, right? And basically, my coworker and his girlfriend were on like a team, and they would just take turns doing it, just so we could try it and see what would happen. And my boyfriend is really good at lying. Like anytime we're playing werewolf, he's the werewolf. So when we played this game, the whole time I was like, "You're the betrayer, man. You're the betrayer. I don't trust you." And he's just like, "Come on, get off my back." Everything was fine until we get to the last round, and my coworker's girlfriend Jen was sitting next to me, and everything was going good. We were about to complete thing, and all of a sudden she just starts doing some crazy stuff, and I'm just like, Jen, what the fuck are you doing? And then it starts. I was like, oh my god, they're the betrayer. This is what's happening, and I just lost it. It was really good. It was a really good backstabbing, but yeah, I was totally oblivious to it the whole time. Sorry, I threw an F-bomb in there. We might have to cut that.
We can always just bleep.
True. I don't really care.
As long as it's not an annoying bleep.
We'll just make a fart noise, right?
Just do that. Fart noises.
So another game that's really well known for a unique mechanic as well as a unique component is Tzolk'in, which is a Rio Grande game. It came out in 2012, and the theme of this game is Mayan society. And the draw for a lot of people is that it's a worker placement game with a little bit of a twist. There's a giant calendar wheel in the center of the board that will spin smaller wheels around the side. So just like a cog, it'll keep spinning those wheels as the time in the game goes on. So your workers that you place will slowly move around the wheels to different spots where you can collect different resources. I think for me that is a big win in the fact that there's a lot of worker placement games out there, and some of them seem to blur together, but this one, it just added something that wasn't necessarily a big leap, but just enough to make a change in strategy in terms of what players are trying to do and a level of interest that ties in really well with the theme of the game.
Now, so the wheels that spin around, you really have to kind of plan out your turns and really think it through. Is that correct? Because those things will rotate every turn, like every player's turn.
At the end of every round, everyone will go through and place their people, and then the wheel will turn. So if you don't make it onto a spot that's earlier on the wheel, and you want the resource from earlier on the wheel, but someone else is taking it, you can pay more to go further on the wheel, and then also pay a penalty to go back to that spot. But it's pretty costly, so planning out your moves is important. And the other big mechanic to it that's kind of interesting is the fact that within your turn, you can place people or you can remove people. You have to plan out where each of them is going to be at the point when you take them off, or else you could end up with some really good things or some things you didn't want.
So do you think this game wouldn't work well if it wasn't for that spinning wheel? Like, do you think it's a good game that you would be willing to play again if it didn't have that or that component to it?
I think the mechanics would still work without it. The big part that makes the spinning wheel so great is the fact that it avoids people having to individually move pieces and do a whole lot of setup in between rounds. I think otherwise, without the mechanic of moving workers, it would look a lot like a lot of other games, and that's maybe it would still be one that be worth purchasing, but it might fall into the same tier as a lot of other games where right now it kind of sets itself apart.
That's interesting. Tara, do you want to tell us about Lewis and Clark?
Sure. I don't know if I should mention this or not, but this is actually my tabletop day pick on Geekly Inc. So if you are on that site, you might see my review in detail. I first bought this game because it's just a gorgeous cover. I tend to do that. I've only been buying games for 2 years, and I've got 40 plus board games right now, and it's just kind of my addiction. So I picked it up on a whim just because I had heard, some of my friends talking about it, and it's just so pretty. I was like, sure, I'll try this. And it actually sat in my apartment for about 2 months before I actually played it, because the mechanics in it are so complicated, and they're a lot different than what I was currently playing. So it took me a long time to understand how the game worked, and I had to watch a bunch of videos and just read the rule book and just put it together and take it apart a bunch. But after I figured out how everything worked, I was just like, this is so different, and it's so pretty, and I had to get everybody in on it. I don't even know where to start with this game. So it's basically a race, but it's also worker placement because you need resources in order to move forward on the track. And it's also hand management and set collecting. And then there's also these, I don't even know how to describe this other than just telling you how it works. So whenever you want to play a card from your hand, you have to sacrifice another card in your hand for that round to power it up. And basically what you do is, if your card is worth 1 power, then you grab another card that's equal to 1, and you flip that card over and put it next to that card to power it up. And then, so it's okay, I get 1 fur. So you power it up that way, and you get a fur. But if your opponent also has a fur icon on one of his played cards, you get to play off of his cards. So instead of 1 fur, you would get 2. Or up to 2. You don't have to take it. So I thought that was really interesting, and it took a while to figure out how that worked. But after you played it a couple of times, is really interesting to, play off of other people.
It seems like there's kind of a lot going on from what you described.
Yeah, there definitely is a lot going on, but the way that the game kind of moves, it made sense. So when it was your turn, you would, you could play your card, and then you could take hold on, let me think about this for a second. You play your card and you get your resource, or you could do a village action, which required the worker placement part of it, using your meeple to go into the village and taking an action. But your hand you continue to go until you've run out of cards, or you can no longer do any actions. And then you do, the typical worker placement thing where, in this game it's called set up camp, but it's the feed your workers phase, basically. And at that point, you have to look at what resources or what cards you haven't used, and that can count against you. If you haven't used all the cards in your hand, you end up having to go backwards. Or if you're only really allowed to have 1 free worker, but if you have extra workers in your camp, that also causes you to go back, which I thought was kind of cool. It kind of works in a story way. It's based off of history and that manifest destiny stuff, which is kind of boring, but in the game it's interesting.
That's because board games make learning fun.
It's very true.
I do want to cover like historical board games later because there's one coming out on Kickstarter called Tesla versus Edison that I'm super excited
Oh,
about.
I saw
Yeah, I
that.
backed it and I'm really excited for it. So that may be a topic we cover here in the future.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are really pro Tesla and really anti Edison to some extent. So I'm
Yeah,
wondering if, like, how they'll do that.
the creator of this even said it was sparked by the idea that it was from the Oatmeal's kind of cartoon article, I guess, or comic that he did about Tesla and singing his praises and everything like that. So that's what got the creator looking at this aspect of Tesla and Edison warring over which current would be used in America. So the aspect of this game is like you can pick, I think there's maybe 5, and I think more will get improved with the, as the push goals go on. But there's like 5 characters you can play, and it's like Tesla and Edison are the big ones, and then there's like 3 other players that were actual players in this war of currents, AC or DC. And it's kind of about rewriting history almost. So then there's like certain events which will be propaganda that could influence society's view on which current is the best. And it's all reality based. So some of these propaganda things are like the electric chair and some really kind of scary things like people were electrocuting dogs out in the middle of the streets, showing
Oh God.
showing like how this electrical current can kill things. And like this is all some real stuff that happened, but where it happens to like AC or DC is kind of up to you. You make that thing. So it's kind of a grim reality and shedding a light on, pardon the pun, shedding a light on what has actually happened in this period of time. Now, there's also good things like, the first Christmas lights were used. I think it's going to be a pretty cool game. I'm excited about it. I don't know the creator's history on Kickstarter or in game design. I'll have to go back and look at that, but the game seemed really polished. There's a few videos of playthroughs from Grotto and a few other people. It looked solid and I decided to back it.
This is kind of a side note, but this reminds me of there's a Bob's Burgers episode where they talk about Thomas Edison, and there's a whole musical number about how he electrocuted an elephant.
Oh, jeez.
If you want to learn more about that, that's one to check out.
Check out Bob's Burgers on Netflix. So guys, I want to talk about this really interesting mechanic, and I guess it's not necessarily a mechanic, but a style of games called Legacy. It's a new aspect of looking at a board game where it's not something that you can continually play over and over and over again with a lot of different groups. It's about creating one story that you kind of take with maybe one group of people, and it's set for a certain amount of plays, but that story that you create in it is supposed to be more rewarding than playing a game, say, 100 times. Now, with the legacy system, what it does is you have a board in a game that you would play, and you will actually change the board by scratching out cities, writing things on it, tearing up components like cards, or characters can die in it and can't be used. But all these playthroughs affect the next playthrough. So you would have maybe a set amount of games. I know in Risk Legacy, which is one of them, and I'll talk about that in a second, you get about 15 playthroughs. So you play the game 15 times, but the choices in game 1 affect the choices in game 7 and 10 and 15. So it's about kind of changing the board and the world that you're creating with it. It's more of a storytelling element, I think, about it, which is something I really enjoy seeing in board games. I'm kind of glad we're moving on to that portion. So the big ones that have come out, the first one is Risk Legacy, which was released by Hasbro in 2011. And then the next biggest title I would say coming out is Pandemic Legacy, which will come out in October of this year of 2015. And then Seafall, which is set for this year, I think potentially like fourth quarter 2015. All these games are designed or co-designed by a creator named Rob Daviau, who's been kind of the person that sparked this new design in games. I'm really excited about it. I think it's a great new way to play games, and I'm super excited for all these games to come out. I think Seafall is going to be an important one because with Pandemic Legacy and Risk Legacy, those are already existing titles in licensed material. So he's kind of been hindered by that. Not necessarily hindered, but you have to play homage. Pandemic's going to play almost the same way as Pandemic is. Same thing with Risk Legacy. So it's kind of like tacking on to that. But with Seafall, it's a game about trading via ships. And so I'm kind of excited to see how that is. Maybe like we'll see hurricanes or something like that destroying certain ports for 2 games or something like that. So I don't know. I think it'll be good.
That sounds interesting. Beep, 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 beep. Ugh. Oh, God.
So Phil,
Yeah.
how do you think the balance is between these games? Because I know a lot of people hesitate when it comes to Risk Legacy because of the fact that you are drawing all over your board. That might be a bit of an exaggeration. I mean, you're writing on it.
Yeah.
And you're ripping things up and you're putting tape on it, all this kind of stuff that makes it so it's essentially you get one playthrough. I'm sure you could get around it somehow. But you're tearing your game to pieces, and I know some people are tentative about buying that. How do you think these games measure up when it comes to the idea that you will get those 15 plays out of it and then it's kind of done for?
Yeah. See, I think it's all about what type of gamer you are. If you're somebody that likes to collect a bunch of games and, have a game for every occasion where if somebody says like, oh, I really enjoy worker placements. Well, here are the 5 worker placement games I have. If you're that kind of gamer and want to have that game that you can pull out in any situation, legacy system or the legacy games probably aren't for you. But if you want to try something new, that's one of the freshest things in board gaming out of, in the past 10 years, in my opinion, I'd say definitely try the legacy. It's more about telling a story and, having something unique about unique games within that group that you're playing with. Everybody has that story of, the one game they played. I think this is trying to capture, remember that those 15 games we played and that story that we made throughout this campaign, really, of how these games work. And I think it's going to be interesting seeing the new cooperative version in Pandemic Legacy, because I think that's going to make that bond stronger rather than, oh man, you really messed me up in game 3 and I just couldn't scramble back for game 6 in Risk Legacy. Now, I haven't played Risk Legacy, but I imagine it's not that detrimental where if you lose the early games, you're just going to be treading water for the next 9 or whatever it is.
I think you're the one who mentioned this to me, but Z-Man Games is going to be allowing people to play Pandemic Legacy at Gen Con this fall, right?
Yeah, so Gen Con, they're doing a preview, which, most games do previews. But in this one, they're allowing you to play the first 3 months. In that game, each game is broken down by months. If you win every game, you get 12 games that you play through. But if you, say, lose a game in that month, you would get to actually replay it. And so you could potentially play it 6 times or 6 different games, which I know we're both going, and I'm going to sign up for it once that registration opens for it. Expect to hear more about it and more details to come out, but that's one of my big games I'm looking forward to this year.
I'm really bummed I can't go to Gen Con, but you can only spend so much money on conventions and board games.
Exactly.
Maybe next year.
I'm afraid for my wallet. Just because, it's money to go to the actual convention, but then there's a whole bunch of distributors or publishers selling games that I know I'm just going to want to buy all of them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm only about, 5 hours from Indianapolis, and it's still a bit of an investment to book a hotel, go out there, and know that I'm probably going to spend more money than I should.
Yeah.
You guys live up north, right? Where do you live?
I'm in Iowa.
The frozen tundra of Wisconsin.
Oh, you live in Wisconsin?
Wisconsin.
Yeah. I know a few people from there. And I'm like the opposite of the spectrum in Texas where it's hot as hell already.
It's like 40 degrees up here, and this is considered nice for me in Iowa.
Yeah, it's like 80 today.
Whew. Barely double. Barely.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like jacket weather if you've been here for a while, so it's all right.
Yeah. We all adapt.
Yeah. So somebody want to enter the next little section?
Yeah. So another game that recently came out just at the end of last year was Samurai Spirit. And it, again, kind of like Pandemic, is a pretty straightforward cooperative game. Everyone's working on the same team. There's no betrayer mechanics. Everyone's kind of just working towards the same goal. And in that aspect, there's, again, a few games that you could grab off the shelf that look pretty similar, but it has something interesting to it, and it's this mechanic where if your characters take enough damage, your samurais take enough damage, they turn into sword-wielding animals, Yeah, so you can play as a guy who turns into a boar or a monkey or whatever. It might have you. I think they're all mammals, so if you want to be a dolphin, unfortunately, there's none there.
Oh.
Um,
Oh.
yeah, it's kind of a shame when I bought it. I was looking forward to the sea creatures wielding swords, but it didn't happen. Oh, well, but otherwise, it also adds an interesting mechanic in the sense that when you transform, you are more powerful and you can stop more bandits from destroying the village you're trying to protect. But at the same time, you're also closer to dying, and if any of the samurais die, the game's over. So it's this weird balancing act you have between needing to transform to complete your goals, but also potentially putting yourself in harm's way to do so.
And it's kind of a weird departure because this was made by Antoine Bauza.
Who I love.
He's a really well-known and renowned game designer, and he comes out with this kind of curveball almost, where it's like, oh yeah, it's all feudal Japan and you're samurai, and it's kind of loosely based on the Seven Samurai movie, but you can turn into a monkey at a certain point.
Exactly. And I mean, the box art, there's animals on it, but it's not really the focal point. So when I first opened up the box, I didn't even think about it.
Uh-huh.
I started going through, and then I read the instructions, and I was like, I hadn't even looked over at the other side of the cards. I just assumed that it was one-sided.
Yeah.
And so it is definitely a curveball. I mean, you could play most of the game without even realizing that this is going to happen, which is fantastic.
I think when I played as a wolf, and I was like super stoked about like flipping it over and like hulking out and being a wolf. It was really fun. But how did it go for you? How many people did you play with?
We played with 6 people, so we almost got all the samurais out. It was interesting. I mean, it's one of those games where you kind of have to avoid the whole quarterbacking situation, one person telling everyone else what to do. And that's like the issue with there not being any betrayer mechanics or anything like that. You know you can trust everyone and everything's out on the table, so you can basically play for someone else if they're not willing to, push you back. So definitely play with either a group or just play with a group of people who have a fairly even level of assertiveness, I feel like, or else people are going to get pushed around a little bit more. That's not necessarily going to happen, but it's a potential at least.
Yeah, my trouble with it was the first time we played, the max amount of players, and it just took forever for people to make decisions about what they were going to do, and we had like people trying to quarterback, then other people just being indecisive, and I was just like, oh my god, please, can we just get through this game? But it's a gorgeous game, and the art and the design of it, they really made a conscious effort to make everything like streamline and work together. And I noticed that like the way the cards are and where you put like your tokens and stuff, it was very precise and thoughtful, I felt like. So I appreciated that.
Exactly. And you can fit 3 or 4 copies of this game inside of my Imperial Assault box, which is amazing because it still has a lot going on in it.
You kind of mentioned, or you said this in one of your statements, Michael. I never thought about a betrayer mechanic in a game preventing quarterbacking. And now that I think about it, it makes so much sense. Like, oh, that prevents it because you don't want to listen to everybody because that person could be lying to you. Once you said that, it just kind of clicked in my mind that, that's what some games do. That's their intention to eliminate that quarterbacking aspect to it. Yeah, I just had that weird kind of epiphany as I was listening to you.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's one of those things. It changes the game a lot, so you basically have to go a different direction with it. But it's also very useful in that sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now you were telling me about a game you backed on Kickstarter not too long ago that has a character transformation in it, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a game called Play Me Alice in Wonder Dice.
Oh, I saw that one.
Yeah, it's kind of one that has just really appealing artwork. Looks pretty simple. It's more of kind of a party game, a really quick one where it's just you're rolling dice and placing them as fast as possible. And you can mess with other people too, different things like that. Each person has their own character card, which gives the game an asymmetrical aspect in the sense that you have, starting off, let's say you're Alice. She may have something that's helping her out at the beginning of the game. And like I can't remember what the exact mechanic for that card is, but it's something along the lines of you can accelerate your progression through the first part of the game. But once you get through that first half of the game, you have to flip your card over, and whatever you had helping you originally now becomes a hindrance. So everything you're doing becomes harder in that sense. And I thought that was kind of cool because it's a really simple game, but being able to add a little bit of flair like that helps out a lot.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, I'm like glued to my chair right now, and that really hurt.
How does that happen?
It's like 82 in Texas.
Oh,
Exactly.
okay.
It's hot. I'm in a closet and my legs are stuck to a leather chair.
That's great. I hope that's just your permanent recording studio because that's fantastic. Anyways, let's talk about Keyflower. So there's another worker placement game that has a little bit of a twist on it. It came out in 2012 called Keyflower, and with a lot of your worker placement games, you're essentially placing your meeples on different tiles, and depending on who placed them where, it could block other people from being able to do it. So it's kind of a competition-based thing. And this one adds an auction to the game essentially. So everyone has three different colors behind their screen, so they could have blue meeples, yellow meeples, and red meeples. And there's a whole bunch of resource tiles out on the table. And what one person will do is they'll take, let's say, I take one of my yellow meeple and I place it by the tile I want. The next person can then choose to bid on a different tile with a different color, or they can bid on the same tile using the same color, but they have to outbid me. So they would have to place at least two yellow meeples on that same tile to take it over from me, and they would be winning that bid. So it's kind of interesting. You can only bid with the same one, so you're trying to guess at how many other people might have while not overspending on anything necessarily. And they also still function as a worker placement piece in other parts of the game, so you're trying to manage them in that sense too. It makes the game, again, just kind of interesting in the fact that it's not something you see as often, and it adds kind of an interesting point to an auction game as well, the fact that you have three different types of currency that you're trying to balance as well.
So it's kind of different in the fact that where typical worker placements, you put one worker down and you just basically block that spot. In this game, that spot is never blocked. Other players can always bid on it and outbid you. Is that correct?
Exactly. One of those things, like, if you're pretty sure, like, last round you didn't see a lot of yellow meeples out, you could bid 2 right away on one square and be like, oh, I don't think anyone could possibly bid 3 on this one, so I locked it up. In that sense, you might want to jump ahead, but let's say no one else had any at all. You just wasted one of yours to try and secure up that spot. So it's an interesting balance in that sense.
It's kind of a memory game also, almost.
To some extent. And you don't always know what people have because a lot of it involves drawing from a random bag, but you can try to keep an eye on what was on the board at different points.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's, again, one of those games where the barrier to entry is a little bit higher because of the multiple mechanics going on, but it was a fun one, I thought.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up everything that we wanted to talk about for unique mechanics. If you have a game that you really enjoy that has a unique mechanic, go ahead and tell us over at Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And, we'll maybe do a little recap on our next episode of viewer submissions. What we're going to kind of talk about now is any news or upcoming games that are coming out here soon that we're really jazzed about. And it doesn't have to be games. It can be anything in the community. One of the big things that I really enjoy, Rado is doing a Kickstarter, again, for his 4th season, I believe. Rado is a guy that runs a YouTube series called Rado Runs Through, where it's all just this guy playing board games with himself, essentially. He's showing you how the games work, and it's him playing against himself. He uses the moniker of his wife, Jen, that he's playing against.
Jen's totally there, man. You just never see her.
I think that's one of the push goals this season is she plays 4 games or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So she will be in there. I know in their run-through of Mysterium, which is a game you essentially have to have at least 2 players, she was there for that one.
Yeah, I vaguely remember seeing her one time. Rado is amazing. Anytime I'm looking to get a new game or someone's recommended something, I always look to see if he's done a video about it. And if he has, I usually end up buying the game. I'm like, okay, Rado likes it, or Rado said this about it, so go back him on Kickstarter for sure.
He puts out so much content, and he does it ad-free, I think. He doesn't get any kickbacks from publishers or anything like that. So if you like his work and want to support him, head over there and definitely check it out. I know he's going to get backed by me just because, like Tara said, I turn to him if I want to know how the game works. He goofs up every once in a while, or, well, usually once or twice a game, but it's worth it. I mean, he's doing it all himself.
Yeah, and he's putting out so much content, it's like hard for him not to goof up a little bit every now and then. We should tweet at him. Be like, hey.
Let him know we're out here.
Hey, we like you. Let's be friends.
Let's be friends. Let's be Twitter friends.
We support you.
One of us. One of us.
We're all in this together. So what are you guys jazzed about coming up here soon?
I'm super excited about expansions this year for 5 Tribes and Abyss. I know Five Tribes has been getting a lot of news lately about the controversy surrounding the game, but aside from that, it's one of my favorite games from last year. I think, was it Will Wheaton called it a worker displacement game? I thought that was a great explanation for that game. So I'm excited for an expansion. A little disappointed that it's only 4 players. 5 Tribes for 4 players. I mean, aside from that, I'm really excited about that. And then Abyss, which is also Bruno Cathala, another one of my favorite game designers. I played Abyss one time, and it was cool. The artwork is gorgeous, but I'm hoping that an expansion might change some of the aspects of the game and maybe give it another shot.
Michael, anything you're excited about coming out here soon?
Yeah, I normally like to say that I'm pretty discerning when it comes to Kickstarter, but I probably spend more money on it than I should. But one that I'm really excited about is Blood Rage, mainly because of the fact that Eric Lang was a designer who's involved in it. He did like the recent XCOM board game, as well as a Star Wars card game, Game of Thrones the card game, and a Warhammer edition as well. So he has a pretty good track record, and this is a war game that's coming out based on Norse mythology, and it looks really cool. I would imagine that would probably make retail just because of the people that are involved. I mean, there's obviously no guarantee, but if not, just let me know if you ever want to borrow the copy. Maybe if I'm feeling generous, I can mail it to somebody for a while.
Did you see that now they're writing crossover rules for Blood Rage and Conan?
Really, I didn't even see that. What's involved in that?
Yeah, so I guess it's Conan the Barbarian licensed game, which did astoundingly well on Kickstarter. I think it was $2.5 million raised for that project alone.
Oh, dang.
Wow.
Yeah, and they just kept adding on expansion after expansion, and it's all like minis and stuff like that. I think they're allowing scenarios to cross between them, so it's either like using the Conan miniatures in Blood Rage or using some of the Blood Rage miniatures in the Conan game. I haven't really looked at the in-depth rules on how they're going to accomplish that, but I know there is talk of crossover between those two publishers. Is it Cool Mini or not? I think is maybe publishing one of them.
That's the Blood Rage publisher.
That's the
for
Blood
sure.
Rage publisher. Hopefully more to come on that, and we can kind of keep you guys informed. If you're backers of both of those, that's something you'd probably be interested in.
Here I am trying to be frugal, and now I'm going to have to try to find a way to get my hands on a copy of the Conan game now.
Oh, yeah. I think that it's over, but I'm sure there's some retailer out there that saw this success that it's going to have and probably bought up a bunch of copies.
I told myself for 2015, one of my New Year's resolutions was to not buy as many board games. Technically, I've only bought 2 because I had a bunch of gift cards from Christmas. But the only games I've bought so far were Kickstarter games. I'm doing pretty good so far. I do have a list of games I'm allowed to buy.
This year's the first year I've ever actually started doing Kickstarter ones. It's interesting to me. I know that probably when Kickstarter first started and people discovered that they could do board games this way, it was a little bit more risky. But I think it's all about just trying to find the creators that have a good history with Kickstarter and actually delivering. I know there's one game, I think it's called Myth, that came out and has been kind of bad about fulfilling their actual goals.
Oh no. I have this feeling that Slap 45, which is the creators of Cards Against Humanity's new game, it's supposed to come out, is it April yet? In April, and I just have this feeling that it's not going to deliver on time, and I'm so nervous about it because I really want the game.
Pre-orders in general can be kind of risky, but if you know what you're playing with, do a little research, and you might be better for it.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank everybody for listening to the first full episode of Where Do the Meeples Go? As always, if you want to go ahead and talk with us, shoot us an email at meeplesgo@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at meeplesgo.
Make sure you guys tweet us your Meeples pictures. We want to see where your Meeples are going.
Yeah, if you got a Meeple that you put in kind of a unique place, just send it over to us.
This is very important to us.
Yeah. This is all we want. We don't even care about this podcast. We just want to see pictures of Meeples.
Oh, yeah. Meeples are funny.
But yeah, if you want to follow us as hosts individually, you can find me at Canada_Phillip. That's Phillip with 2 L's.
You can find me at Tara__T, TEA.
And I'm at the Feisty Taco, E before I in Feisty.
Thanks, everyone.